at 2:42. They just projected. Hey, everybody, are we live? Yes, that's what kind of night it's been. Jonathan Saenz with Texas Values for this important and fun and timely election wrap-up, sort of. Everything's not wrapped up yet, but just about in Texas. The big news is Senator Ted Cruz holds on to his seat. And as a matter of fact, when all the numbers are counted, it might be quite a significant victory. He might end up winning by 10 or 11 points, which is surprising because at the beginning of the night, it did start really close. But then all of a sudden, you could see Ted Cruz as the votes were counted out in West Texas and anywhere west of 35 and away from the big cities. His number was pretty strong, as a matter of fact. And so, but look, I mean, I don't want to feel like, this is a surprise, but at the same time, I do think a lot of people thought it might be by 5 or 6 points, and it seemed to be very close. But the reality is Colin Allred couldn't close the deal. And when the race got serious and people started paying attention and actually talking about the issues, he was nowhere close to what Texans were looking for. I mean, the guy could not even communicate that he didn't want men to compete in women's sports. And at some point he did try to say that, but it was too late because he was flip-flopping because it was clear that his voting record said the opposite. So, I mean, I think you could argue that Colin Allred was trying to fool Texas voters. He was trying to deceive them and mislead them and really lie to them, hoping his record wouldn't catch up to him. But it did. And, great job to Ted Cruz's campaign for seeing an issue that, we talk a lot about as an organization, but, across the country, it's getting more popular and more meaningful and important. But I don't think going to this election, people would have thought it would be in the top 10, maybe top 7 or 8. It was in the top 3. Okay, the Ted Cruz versus Colin Allred race was about really the 3 top issues were economy, border security, and the Save Women's Sports issue. I mean, and Colin Allred did it to himself. I mean, he invited that issue to be the way it was because of his voting record and how he came after Cruz on some stuff that was really childish, in my opinion, and really not relevant. Cancun Cruz, I know that bothered a lot of people, but not really an issue that was going to matter all that much election, at least not if Ted Cruz engaged, which he did. And he came out, guns blazing, if you will, and no holds barred. So listen, we're going to have a lot to talk about, a lot of Texas results to unpack, but I don't know what's going to happen, Mary Elizabeth, while we're on this live stream video. And I'm going to give Mary Elizabeth an award for the best background for any video we've ever done. And if it looks kind of weird, because I actually moved to a new house, my screen, about 5 or 6 weeks ago, the worst time in my life I could ever move with everything going on, but the actual perfect time for me to get into a house in the neighborhood we had really been hoping for. Long story short, I haven't figured out all the lighting and stuff in my room other than this backdrop where there's plenty of light on me, but there's just a black background. Yes, I do have hair. You can kind of see it. But the issue I have is when I do these virtual backgrounds like this, it just that kind of looks weird, and I just don't like that effect. So that's why I switch it back to just go to no background, but that means there's all this black behind me. So nonetheless, Mary Elizabeth, you look great. You look like you're at, a decision desk. You're on Fox News and, you're going to call a state soon, but I'm serious. I want y'all to hang with me, people, Texas Value supporters and people watching this live stream, because we've got a lot of good insight to these election results that we want to share with you. And I'm hoping we might stay long enough that the race for president of the United States is going to get called while we're on, Mary Elizabeth, because Trump is at 242 electoral votes, and I think he just needs 270. Anyway, where are you? And tell us, kind of your insights and, first reflections. I mean, I think for Texas, the Ted Cruz race is the biggest news. Obviously, Trump and the presidency is a big deal, but there's no doubt that the Ted Cruz race was the biggest race of this season for Texas.
Absolutely, Jonathan. So I'm here at the Travis County GOP election watch party, and there are about probably 400 people here. So Travis County does have supporters of President Trump and Senator Ted Cruz. And the room was just electric whenever we got the news that Ted Cruz would be coming back to the Senate. I mean, I think we were all excited to hear that news. It's been a lot of good energy. As you can see behind me, we have this screen with all of these results rolling in from different states. Just seeing all the good news so far. It's been, really good to talk about how the grassroots efforts. There were speeches earlier by Lauren Day and some of the other people that we're friends with in the party. I think Dustin from YRs just took a picture of this podcast. So they're going to be sharing this information and this live stream on their social media as well. So we have a lot of good interaction here, a lot of people here, a lot of young Republicans here too. Our team member Megan was here earlier too. So good to see a lot of people in the area. But one thing that was mentioned earlier is that when we win, like with Senator Cruz, we win down ballot. So these Texas House races, some of these local races where we try to get Republicans for school board, city council, it all matters. And it's really the work of the grassroots that really get us to this level. But it's been a really great night, and we're hoping for a victory for Trump as well.
Well, look, I am jealous because I love watch parties and these moments because you work so hard. And yeah, we know a lot of local people that work on these things, and it's a chance to, there's nothing left for us to do, but just to watch the results come in, because many of us have been involved in these things, either personally or professionally for quite some time, if not a year. In the background, Mary Elizabeth, it's showing that Trump is at 50% to 48.5 in Wisconsin. I mean, I don't know what's going on. I'm seeing different reports. It's showing that he's up big in Georgia. Hang on a second. Ashley, if you'll send the link to Christian Collins, he's ready to join us. But Newsmax, not some of the other outlets, but Newsmax is out there saying that Georgia's already been called for Trump. That puts him at 242 electoral votes. I mean, what else is there for Kamala to win? I mean, she'd have to win Wisconsin. She would have to. They're calling Iowa for Trump. Not a surprise there. But Kamala would have to win. I mean, she'd have to win Pennsylvania and several other states. Look, I'm not in states that I don't think she's predicted to win, or there's even a chance for her to win. So we could be breaking the big news right here. So we're going to hang on. Okay. And if y'all give us a couple of minutes here, we're going to get Christian Collins on from the Montgomery County area, just north of Houston. He worked for the Cruz campaign many years ago. He ran for Congress. He worked for a congressman in Houston, and he runs the Texas Youth Summit and is involved in a lot of political stuff, but certainly is close with the Trump family and campaign, if you will. So if y'all stand by, Christian Collins is going to, let me just send it. Hey, watch for the Zoom link in your email. Text with my voice here. No, I wished I was at some of the watch parties. As a matter of fact, if I was a little bit younger, I would have driven to Houston, my hometown, where I was born and raised, to go to that watch party with Cruz, because so many people there that I know, and I would have enjoyed that, being in that environment. But I have some parenting duties that have taken priority over that, but also it's probably wise for me not to drive so late these days. But it gives me an opportunity to be here. And honestly, I probably need to catch my breath a little bit, because as you know, Mary Elizabeth, we have been working round the clock. And I want people to understand this, right? We have two different entities. We have Texas Values, which is a 501c3, and we have Texas Values Action, which is a 501c4. Through Texas Values Action, we can endorse candidates, okay? Our partner group, Texas Values Action, endorsed President Trump very early on. Probably one of the earliest Texas state-based groups that endorsed President Trump. Texas Values Action was certainly out there endorsing Ted Cruz very early on. And so what do? We're working some C3 stuff, and then we work some C4 stuff. We do a lot of stuff personally. Many of y'all know I was a delegate to the RNC, the Republican National Convention, an at-large delegate from the state of Texas. So I went up there in July, and I was thinking about it, that really since the second week in July, because we usually take a time off the first week of July after our fiscal year in June. Since the second week in July, I have been nonstop almost every other evening during the week, almost every weekend. And I'm not complaining. I'm just telling y'all that's what it's been like. But we realize as an organization how much did we hear about the importance of Christians voting? And I'm looking forward to get some kind of data about if those numbers increased. We sort of took this hashtag up, at the last minute, church the vote, and other things we've been saying, because we realize obviously it's a presidential election, right? So a little bit more attention, but this US Senate race, we knew a lot of people were going to want information. They were going to want to know what was going on these issues. And, if we didn't do our job and inform people about it, they could miss the boat of what they needed to know. And you look at even from a C3 Texas Values perspective, the work we do, the Save Women's Sports issue, the gender modification issue that we're working on all the time in education ways and obviously in advocacy ways. We were able to come out and be the experts and to talk about the voting records of candidates, but also talk about the issues that matter. We had people like Chloe Cole at our gala over the weekend, and in other events we've done. We've had Riley Gaines at I don't know how many events. That young lady is absolutely amazing, right? But it's been a while. Well, I'm not sure we've ever had this much attention on some of our issues for a presidential election and a U.S. Senate race as well. And look, the life issue, big win out in Florida, but it wasn't as relevant to this issue in Texas or, to some extent nationally. I mean, I know the Democrats focus a lot on it, but you didn't see us messages a lot on it because it didn't seem to be a deciding factor or something that was going to matter to a lot of voters that maybe were undecided and people that were locked into it. But yeah, kudos to John Stemberger and Florida Family Voice and all those, Governor Ron DeSantis for that victory for life out in Florida. But man, Mary Elizabeth, it's been nonstop. And I see we got Christian on. So let's go to him. What are they showing in North Carolina, by the way? Mary Elizabeth, behind you. Check real quick. Are they calling it? Oh, they're talking about Virginia. Okay. Christian, welcome to the live stream for election results. Well, at least Texas results. We don't know what's going to happen with the presidency yet. But as I was telling Mary Elizabeth, if we stay on long enough, they might call it for Trump while we're watching. I don't know. While we're on this live stream, all of a sudden, Newsmax is saying, Christian, that they're calling Georgia for Trump and that he's at 242 electoral votes. What do you think's going on?
Well, it's really exciting. We're looking really good in a lot of different places like Wisconsin. I think we're going to look good in Nevada. We're looking good in Arizona, and we're with Latino men, for example, we're up.
Hey, that's me, brother.
That's you.
Come on.
We're up by 10 points, and so that's a seismic shift, and we've never seen anything like that before. So I'm really optimistic about the way that things are going. The way that we won Georgia and North Carolina, that's huge. And that makes it very difficult for Kamala Harris. I mean, she's got to win that entire blue wall. She's got to win Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan. She can't have any of those go the other way. And right now, she appears to be losing Wisconsin. So things are looking pretty good. But
yeah, give us a little bit more insight. And I appreciate you mentioning that. That's what I was thinking. I was talking to my boys. They're old enough now. My oldest son, this was the first election that he voted in. I went to the polling place with him, and I waited to vote until he was able to come on with me. And that was just a chance of a lifetime. I was so encouraged by that. But yeah, if Trump is, and I know Fox behind Mary Elizabeth there, they're saying he's still at 211. But Newsmax is saying he's at 242. That's probably North Carolina and Georgia that they're counting. But what are the other states that Kamala could win? I mean, you got California. I mean, what else? What are some big wins that she would need?
Well, and what's really interesting is just what will happen in Virginia, because that wasn't considered a swing state. Obviously, you have a Republican governor, and they had, a really good go in 2021. That was primarily due to the education stuff and keeping the trans ideology out of the schools in Loudoun County was very big. And of course, it was a really big thing where Republicans actually won that state. So if Trump were to win Virginia tonight, then it's all over. That will be really interesting, but it's boding well for him to do well there because Pennsylvania is nearby. And of course, that's where we put in all of this effort. So Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, we're doing really good.
And not to mention, that's where he was almost assassinated. I mean, it's hard for me to say that too. I know that it happened, but every time I say it, it's hard for me to fathom because, you and I are young enough to some extent that we weren't around when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. I can't imagine what that was like, right? It's just hard to grasp. And so, but that's what almost happened, right? And so, I'm trying to say this with as much delicacy, but did those circumstances had to at least get more attention for people in Pennsylvania and open their eyes a little bit more? Is that a polite way to say it? I don't.
Well, a lot of people thought at that time, Joe Biden was in the race, that it would completely solidify the election for Donald Trump. And of course, a couple of weeks later, Joe Biden was pushed out by his own party. So when it comes to that event, I mean, it was a miracle that he survived. I mean, he
No
was a
doubt.
centimeter from being dead. And it was historic that he would survive that with, he took a bullet to the head. I mean, it hit his ear, and that was the best place that he possibly could have been hit, because anywhere else it would have been catastrophic for our country. So a lot of people said, okay, the race is over now. Donald Trump, if he survived this, he's going to win. I mean, the fight. I mean, it was
Yeah.
huge. But there's a lot of other things going on in Pennsylvania too. I mean, Elon Musk is from Pennsylvania. I mean, he's given $1 million a day away to people that are signing up. It's a lottery system, people that are signing up to support the Constitution. There's another guy there that's doing great work named Scott Pressler. He's an activist, and he's just registering new voters, and tirelessly doing this. It's
What
great
is
work. So,
he has a connection to the Amish community? What is that?
that's another thing. And there's 180,000 Amish that have really gotten involved, and when you enter them, like, well, what is it about Donald Trump that makes you want to come out? And they just said their freedoms are in peril, and they really want to do everything that they possibly can to make sure that they protect their freedoms. And so they've come out in large numbers. I think that's incredible. So, all in all, Philadelphia is the place to watch, because I heard that they need 700,000 votes there. And if they get 700,000 votes, they're going to be looking pretty good on the Democrat side. But President Trump has been eyeballing it all day. And he said, we're sending police there right now because he's heard of election interference, fraud happening there.
Yeah.
And hopefully that stopped whatever was going on there. But point being, there's a lot going on in Pennsylvania. That's the place to watch. And I just pray that we have such a big electoral victory tonight, both in the popular vote and in all the different possible states, that we just crush them, and the Democrat Party goes back to the center and stops this far left nosedive. I mean, it's ridiculous how leftist they've become.
Well, it's interesting too. When Ted Cruz did his victory speech, and by the way, I wasn't trying to be ugly, but my colleagues, if you will, and the people I know at Fox 7 were reporting about the Ted Cruz race like 10 or 15 minutes ago, as if it hadn't been decided. And one of them was at the Colin Allred watch event, and it seemed to be kind of sad. And they were like, someone here said, we may not know until much later, and, we're going to keep counting votes. And I'm like, all the national news, entities have already said it's over. What are y'all doing? And they went to Ted Cruz, and they were like, everybody's having a good time, and it felt awkward. I'm just like, oh my gosh, do they have any idea what they're doing? And so, and finally, they went back to national news and back to local, and I actually texted someone over there. I was like, hey, I don't know if y'all realize this. And then they said the race had been called, and they went to Ted Cruz. Here's my point. Senator Cruz said, thank you, George Soros, for spending $100 million and really wasting your money in Texas. I don't know. Could that have been a factor that they went all in on Cruz here in Texas? And look, you and I know, had they won, had Colin Allred won, had Cruz lost, it would have been catastrophic for the state of Texas, but certainly for other parts of the country for Republicans. But it might have factored into, Soros not being able to focus at least on some other Senate seats, and I don't know, maybe the presidential.
You're exactly right. I think just having Ted Cruz back, he's the most prominent, powerful senator Texas has ever had. We need him back. And thank God we avoided this gun grabbing communist that wants to give sex changes to illegal immigrants and put men and women's sports. In Texas, we want, secure borders, energy independence, and we want to do everything that we can to keep crime-free cities as best as we can. We do not want the crime anywhere. And Colin Aldred would have been detrimental to our way of life in Texas. We are keeping Texas, Texas. Now, to your point about spending the money in Texas, Bernie Moreno it has taken Ohio. It looks like he'll win that. And then we also picked up another Senate seat in West Virginia. The former governor who was a Democrat, his name escapes me. Now he's a Republican, and he got the little cute bulldog. I mean, somebody can pull up his name.
I saw that earlier. I'm a bulldog fan, like those kind of dogs, not Georgia bulldogs, the dog itself. And so I did see that. That was cute.
It's very cute. And so we picked up 2 Senate seats, and it's looking good. We're probably going to pick up another Senate seat in Montana. The Navy SEAL who's running, I think his name is that name escaped. I can never pronounce it, but we're going to pick up probably 3 Senate seats at least. Who knows what will happen in Arizona and other places? So we're looking good, and we're going to pick up a couple of seats in the House. So we're looking like we're going to take the House and the Senate. And the New York Times has given President Trump projected that he would have an 80% chance of winning the presidency. So that's looking really good for us.
Yeah.
It is a great night for conservatives and for our country. We're just praying that this is so, and we can't count our chickens before they hatch. We got to get across the finish line.
So speaking of the Save Women's Sports and some of these different issues that Cruz focused on in the state, let's bring in our Save Women's Sports expert here, Mary Elizabeth Castle, who has been all things Title IX and it just, we need to hire more people on that issue because the way it's exploded, but she's done a fantastic job of helping us navigate that issue and leading the charge in so many ways, not just for us, but for the state, and has taken on a national role at times on this issue. And I haven't followed a lot of other races, but there is no doubt the presidential race and the U.S. Senate race in Texas, the Save Women's Sports issue was a huge factor, certainly in the Senate seat. I saw Donald Trump, heard him say it from the nomination, stage at the RNC, that men were not going to compete in women's sports when he becomes president. But certainly, Mary Elizabeth, in the Senate seat, I mean, those ads the past 2 or 3 weeks with Ted Cruz, remarkable. And, I don't know how much money he spent, but every time I was watching college football on Saturday, there it was. And smart of them to do that. But I don't think those ads work as much if that issue had not sort of matured to a point that it was growing to a legitimate concern for people.
You're absolutely right, Jonathan. I don't think anyone will ever forget past this election, that commercial where you have the girls working so hard with their fathers and their parents in the sport. And then all of a sudden you have a man dressed as Colin Allred tackling a female athlete on the field. That's an unforgettable commercial. I was at a Texas Tribune event last week just to see what the other side was saying. And they said that commercial would probably do Colin Allred in, because they said there's no denying that that's a huge issue of men competing in women's sports, something that the other side has tried to deny is happening. But as you see with Riley Gaines and icons and so many other people on this issue, it's happening all across the country and across the world. I mean, today, actually, it was yesterday, we just found out that the Olympic boxer from Algeria, who is actually a man and everyone could tell was a man, who beat up in contact sports. I did contact sports myself, and he was boxing these women in the Olympics, beating them to a pulp, to the point that some of these female boxers just gave up.
They just gave up. They surrendered.
They surrendered, and they said they did some type of test or whatever they did and said, oh, he's actually female. Well, they found out yesterday that he has all of the male anatomy, which proves that he's a male. But just showing that even on the international stage, that this is becoming more and more of an issue. And I think this was an issue that helped Senator Cruz come back to office. I mean, once that commercial started playing, Colin Allred had to actually be on the defensive, and that's never where you want to be as a candidate, trying to defend yourself. And he had to say that he wasn't in favor of boys and girls sports, but his record proved otherwise. He voted against and he's a congressman currently, and he voted against a bill in the House of Representatives that would have protected female sports. He's voted for transgender surgery. He's shown support for men in sports. So he really put the nail in the coffin when he tried to say otherwise in defense of that commercial. But he realized that that issue was hurting him. And when it comes to the presidential race, you can't deny that this is a huge issue as well, not just because of what's happening in Nevada, San Jose State University, and other parts of the country, but because of what the Biden administration did on this issue. They decided they would spend 4 years on redefining sex in Title IX, a law that was created in the 70s to give women the right to educational and athletic opportunities, basically stripping those away. And it took Biden 4 years to do this. From the very first day he was in office, he tried to implement this rule. He made so many procedural mistakes. Actually, 400,000 people in the United States commented against this change to Title IX, and that delayed the process. And then in a rushed way, before his presidency ends this year, it went into effect, this change to Title IX. But 26 states actually have stopped legally this new rewrite of Title IX. And you better believe that Kamala Harris would do even worse if she were to become president. So this issue has been very huge for so many female athletes, for so many women, and for so many parents as well who don't want to see, men and women's sports or men and women's restrooms. So you can't deny that this issue has helped Senator Cruz, and hopefully will help Trump as well.
You're absolutely right. And I'm doing a screen share here. Our partner group, Texas Values Action, put a side-by-side together where that was one of the issues, right? That he supports protecting women and girls from men competing in women's sports. Cruz, yes. Colin Allred, no. And in this document that we put together, there's all kinds of bullet points and commentary and links to House voting records. I mean, there's nowhere to run on this issue. I mean, he was dead in the water on that. But, and obviously he knew he was in trouble, and I guess hoping people wouldn't remember, or that he could try to spin his votes, whatever the case may be. I mean, over the weekend, we had our big gala. We gave out an award to Jen Evans, an incredible mother of a college athlete, several college athletes. She got the Kelly Shackelford Award for her work on the Save Women's Sports issue as, just sort of your average citizen that's come forward because that issue has been so important, and it's taken so much courage. Look at Riley Gaines. She's now this national figure because she said enough of this and she stepped forward. But it's also maybe become a swing issue for voters because now you have women, liberal women like Martina Navratilova and others. I have to imagine you saw some crossover voting from people that were Democrats, maybe soft Democrat women or soft Republican women that were like, oh, but that's a big issue and he's bad on that. I mean, Christian, what's your, vantage point? You have the Texas Youth Summit. I know there are a lot of young girls and young people that, are watching this issue. I think it was a big factor in Texas.
Oh, absolutely. I think you guys have done such a great job of driving home this issue and supporting Senator Cruz. And I think Colin Allred definitely had a lot to defend. His voting record has been very clear. He's been on the wrong side of this issue. He can say what he wants to say, but the voting record obviously is clear that he has been on the wrong side of this issue. And so here in Texas, especially with the young people that I've been blessed to get to lead at the Texas Youth Summit, so many of the young people recognize that this is unfair. It's just common sense. Most people would recognize that. And so we've got to do everything that we can to keep Texas, Texas. And the way that we're going to do that is continue to elect good leaders like Ted Cruz, all the way from Senate, all the way down to school board. We've got to have people that have common sense. And they say that common sense now is very far right. I don't think that's far right. I think that's center. I think that was what people have always believed for a long time. And then all of a sudden, the left is so far left, they've just gone crazy. And so there's a lot of liberal people that are, Elon Musk and Robert F. Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard and so on, Joe Rogan.
Oh yeah, that's been a huge factor. These sort of crossover personalities and major political figures that you would have thought would have stayed out of the race or whatever. I mean, a lot more people feeling comfortable with national prominence. Patrick Mahomes, his mother, talking about her support for Trump before the Monday Night Football game the other night, right? I mean, and so real quick, a couple of other
That's
states
because
have been
they're
called.
insane. That's
What's
because
that?
they're insane, Jonathan. They're so crazy that it's caused what used to be liberal people to have to decide that to vote alongside the Republicans because there's nowhere else for, old-fashioned liberals to go but to the Republican Party with the conservatives.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. So California's been called for Kamala Harris. Not a surprise. Speaking of dogs, I knew my little pup over here is going to try to make a little cameo. But he doesn't like to get up in my lap very often. Otherwise, he might be able to make an appearance. So, but that's not a surprise that California would go for Kamala Harris. And I think Maine got called for Trump. In a couple other states, at least Fox is saying it's 193 Harris, 216 Trump. You still got Newsmax out there. They've already called, I believe, North Carolina and Georgia for Trump. So that's sort of a difference there on some of the reporting. Let me see if if Newsmax has an update or anything that they're doing, if they've changed that. I don't think so. But is there another big state out there for Kamala to get? I mean, I guess it's these states where we're seeing they're still neck and neck. Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, Michigan. I mean, what do you think? Any other thoughts about a pathway? Or you think she's going to be stuck at maybe 215 or 220, Christian?
Well, I think we're looking really good. And I mean, obviously, Georgia, North Carolina, Newsmax has already called those states. So we're looking good there. He really needed just two more swing states to solidify 270 something. And so we're looking good in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. If we just got those two states alone, that we're done. But I mean, we're also looking good in Arizona and Nevada. So based on
Yeah,
the polling,
it could end up being a quite significant and just a landslide to some extent, or at least a significant victory for Trump instead of a squeaker, which is what he's talked about a lot, right? Too big to rig. By the way, you can see his little name tag here. This is red. Can't hold it up the right way. There
he's
it is.
a cutie. He's a
And
cutie.
so this is my mini golden doodle. And golden doodle. It's supposed to be the kid's dog, but you know how that goes. Somehow I've ended up doing. But actually, he's grown on me. I like dogs, but I really just got it for the kids. But now I'm like, man, I like this little guy. It's been fun having him around, and a little pal to take a walk with, and throw the ball around in the backyard, all kinds of stuff that puppies do. But okay, you got to go. So all right, so Virginia, they're showing 50-48. And I mean, all these states, Pennsylvania, 51-48 Trump. I can see it there in the background with Mary Elizabeth. Let's see the next one. They show 70% reporting. They're just about done over there. North Carolina, 51-48. That's 80% reporting. So that's why Newsmax has already called that for Trump, you would have to imagine. And then the next state, let's see, Michigan, 51-46.5 with 28% reporting in Michigan. Man, it could be some, but what I was going to say is that the Trump campaign talked a lot about too big to rig, right? Winning a bunch of states. So it takes it off the table of, some of the other drama that we saw in 2020.
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, because if we don't have it too big to rig and it's close and, we're talking maybe 10, 20, 30,000 votes spread in each of these various states, then we're in big trouble because they can just essentially, and we have poll watchers, as far as I understand, in many of these places, but what they did last time was they kept the poll watchers out in places like Philadelphia, and they know exactly how many ballots that they need. And I'm not alleging that they're cheating, but who knows what they're doing in there? We don't know, because if we can't see it, we don't know. So, and you have mail-in ballots that are coming in from all over the place, right? They ushered this in with COVID, and so they've really taken advantage and continue to do this. I mean, Barack Obama and his wife have really pushed mail-in ballots, even in the wake of COVID no longer being really much of a factor. So, I mean, Democrats want mail-in ballots to stay because they don't want in-person voting and they do not want a voter ID required. This has come to the point where in California, it's illegal to even ask someone for a voter ID. And so the only conclusion that you could draw from this is that if they do not want voter IDs and they do not want in-person voting, then they want no traceable way to prove that there's fraud in an election. And I mean, Dinesh D'Souza's covered this in depth in his most recent movie, where there are simply people that will go to the Secretary of State's page and they will figure out who the people are that have not voted on the Democrat side, and they will fill out the ballots for them and sign it for them, and voila. And these people, some of them that are checking the ballots, they're not checking signature verification in these Democrat states, and they're making minimum wage, and they're just simply counting it another one for the Democrat. And it's really tough. So when Trump says you have to have it too big to rig, in other words, it has to be such a big victory in sheer numbers that it's just such an overwhelming number that the Democrats cannot, stuff ballots and, get an extra 10, 15 there. No, you're going to have to overcome 100, 200,000, and that's really, really hard.
Well, and I would dare to say that Trump saying too big to rig and all these other stuff motivated a lot of Republicans in Texas to turn out in stronger numbers, even though there was a lot of confidence that Trump would win Texas. You can't take anything for granted. I heard a lot of that kind of talk. And so that probably helped Ted Cruz, because we know there's been a little bit of difference sometimes between, what appears his possible margin for victory, like when he was on the same ticket with Abbott and stuff like that. And so, but let's go to a couple other races. All right, let's bring it back home to Texas a little bit more. And I'm going to do a share screen here so people can see some of these results for Texas. I don't think there was any real changes on congressional seats. It looked like Mayra Flores was going to have a shot to win, but the latest I'm seeing here, according to this data from Associated Press that Texas Tribune has aggregated, she's down by 2 or 3 percentage points. So I'm not sure if that's going to come together for her. But I looked at a lot of these other seats and I don't see anything. Does that surprise you? I mean, that's probably disappointing for her, but
that's a D+11, Jonathan. And so for her to just be 2 or 3 points behind, she should really pat herself on the back. Unfortunately, after redistricting in 2022, they carved up her district and gave some of the best parts of it to Monica De La Cruz and Michael Cloud. And so,
and Monica's going to win by probably 25 points, if not more, but
sure. And she won. Mayra did win, with a 6 or 7 point deficit before. It was a D+6 or D+7 under the old District 34. But now with it being a D+11, that's a big steep hill to climb. But I mean, it's a worthy investment for the RNC and the NRCC to invest in Mayra Flores in South Texas, because she's been such a big proponent of turning South Texas into what now is a Republican stronghold. We've always known that Hispanics had conservative values when it comes to the family. They're Catholic or they're evangelical. They're Christians who are pro-life, they're pro-family, they have the right values. And Mayra Flores has really brought that out of them. And she's been such a great vessel for the conservatives and Republican Party. Regardless of what happens in this race, she's my dear friend. I hope she keeps running. She's a wonderful, wonderful vessel.
Well, look, you got some new people coming to Congress, even though they're in seats that were probably easily winnable once you get to the general, so to speak. Brandon Gill, who I know is a friend of yours, is going to take that seat from up in North Texas. That was an open seat that came available, and he won with a crowded field in the primary, and then had a pretty smooth sailing after that.
Brandon,
let's go to Senate, though. Okay, and I've got the screen shared. Go ahead, Christian.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I said Brandon is Dinesh D'Souza's son-in-law.
Right.
And I was in a movie with him, Police State. I was the pastor and he was the FBI agent, with a group of FBI agents who arrested me in that movie, which was pretty neat. I love Brandon. He's really a young guy, 30 years old, has a great story, married to Dinesh's daughter. And when he ran, he had the support of President Trump, Senator Ted Cruz, Club for Growth,
Yeah.
the House Freedom Fund. I mean, he had the whole gauntlet. If you're thinking Infinity Stones, like he had every single Infinity Stone. He is going to be a great weapon for the Republicans in Texas. He's not going to be the type of Republican that just sits on his hands and takes up space. He's going to be vocal. He's going to speak out and be bold. And I'm excited to see what comes for Brandon.
And not only that, but I mean, he's a younger guy, right? So he takes a seat that somebody that retiring. So now you can sort of project that he's going to be there for a while. And there's a lot of support in that district. Our partner group, Texas Values Action, did endorse him, got to spend time with him. He was at our gala over the weekend with his beautiful wife and beautiful daughter. They're, the cutest little family coming together, bringing their stroller to events. I remember those days. It was a blast. So let me go back to the screen share real quick, though. On some of these other races, taking it back to state, there was some talk that maybe Republicans were going to pick up that Senate seat down in South Texas. Lamatia, the Democrat, the lieutenant governor, got involved in that race. I feel like, I'm not saying it came together late, but I mean, there's a lot of other things to focus on, but it got some momentum. But it looks like Adam Hinojosa is going to come up short. I don't know. There's 65% of the votes in it. So it looks here, but that 3.5 point margin might be too much for him to overcome. But just a near miss there. I mean, look at some House seats here at the Texas level. I know you and I care a lot about these issues. Our good friend Steve Toast coming back, no surprise there. I'm trying to see if there's some other seats that I know one that was talked about was the Steve Kennard seat. I looked earlier, that's District 70, and he was down. Yeah, I still see a 3-point, if not 4-point margin there. Probably, yeah, with 83%, that race you could say is over. Trying to think if there was another seat. I saw Caroline Harris. She was fine. Look at this, 74. Did you see that? I don't know where this is. Maybe Mary Elizabeth does. Eddie Morales, 28% of the vote is in, and there's 140 votes separating these two here. We might have to take a look at that. Very interesting. I don't think our partner group, Texas Values Action, I don't think we endorsed in that race. I'm not sure if there are going to be any other surprises other than, where's this race with Denise Villalobos? I'll try to find that district in just a minute. I saw some chatter about it on social media, and not a race, again, that we were really following. A lot of the people that our partner group, Texas Values Action, has endorsed looked like they had pretty strong pathways to victory, with the exception of a few like Steve Kennard. We find this race.
The other race I think was,
yeah, go ahead.
The question was Texas Rep Angie Chan against
Button.
versus Avery Bishop, and Avery is a young Democrat, and Angie Chan Button is is a Republican. So
yeah, let me go back to that one because I know that's up in the Dallas area. I see Mark LaHood. That race people thought was going to get a little tight, and looks like he's got a 5-point margin there. He took over the seat that he really displaced in the primary from Steve Allison, who was out there campaigning, telling people to vote for the Democrat. Some sour grapes there by Steve Allison, someone who at least we thought had a lot of promise early on and then really lost his way or showed his true colors, however you want to look at that. I'll try to see I don't know what the district number is for this Villalobos race. Let me see the seat for the one that you're talking about. Oh my goodness. With Angie Chin Button is, let me let Mary Elizabeth look up that, and I'll come back to that in just a second if she can figure out. So I'll take off the screen share.
112.
112. Okay, let me see if I can go back to it. Thanks. And let's see where we're at, if this has been updated. Okay. This shows Oh, she looks like she almost got a 10-point victory. So she turned something around. Well, 56%, 7% of the votes are in, but that's still probably close to being done. Let me do a refresh on this too, so we can get some of the updated numbers. I'm going to take screen share off for a second. You know, we look at Cruz coming back, you know, some newer people in the Congress, here from Texas. A lot of those seats that are going to be new are Republican House members who won in primaries and then had a cleaner pathway once they got to the general. Some of them, like Katrina Pearson, didn't even have a primary opponent. You know, people like, I'm going to forget his name, David Lowe, who knocked off an incumbent and did not have a primary opponent. And so the Texas House is going to look different. I hear Abbott's planning something tomorrow, some announcement about school choice, you know, hitting the ground running on that issue. I mean, who's going to be the Speaker of the House? David Cook wins his reelection. He was at our event over the weekend. You know, does he have the votes, you know, against Dade Phelan when, you know, the members come back? I'm hearing different reports. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But I mean, what do you think is going to happen with that speaker race? And how you think we're in a strong enough position on school choice, Christian, when we come back in January?
You know, it depends on who you ask. You know,
Yeah.
I've asked members who are more of the hardline, new, you know, reformers, and they say there's no way that Dade Phelan will be speaker. And then I've asked some of the folks that have been there for a long time who aren't voting for Dade Phelan, but they reason and then they say, well, you know, he just needs 13 Republicans to side with the 65 Democrats. So, you know, I think Dade Phelan has a good chance of becoming speaker, but I mean, even as the Republican conference will decide, you know, internally how they'll go about it, and they'll make some votes you know, toward the end of the, you know, we're talking, you know, this November, December as they're meeting. Really, this is going to be decided in January. Um,
Yeah.
we're
Well,
going
and
to
look, I
know.
mean, you know, I hear whispers that, oh, there could be another candidate and somebody else might emerge. You know, you know, has David Cook closed the deal? I mean, I don't know. I'm not in those conversations that happen behind closed doors, you know, amongst members. I just hear, you know, some chatter on the side here and there. You know, and I mean, does the Ted Cruz race impact things at all? That, I mean, if he ends up winning by 10 points, that's pretty strong considering, you know, the polling suggesting that race was neck and neck. Does that allow some House members to feel a little bit more confident in the type of speaker for their own reelection? I think that could be a factor. I don't think this, you know, think about this for a second. I don't feel like the school choice issue was really a factor in a lot of elections in November, Republican versus Democrat, and, you know, the U.S. Senate race, even the presidential, maybe a little bit. You know, I think it was, you know, probably talked about a little bit, but I'm not sure that November adds a lot of any more momentum to the school choice issue that wasn't always, you know, already there. Mary Elizabeth, let me bring you back in so you don't feel like you're, you know, we're just leaving you out of the conversation here. You've been around some discussions lately on school choice. You know, are we about where we were, you know, in May when these incumbents got knocked off? Are we in a better position? I mean, or is it really, until we know who the speaker is, it's hard to say.
Well, I think you do have a lot of members coming in from the primaries who will be really strong advocates for school choice. So we are in a better position to at least have the vote in the House for school choice. And we are already hearing in the Senate how they're revamping and revising their strategy on how to get it past the finish line as well. So I think we're in a stronger position policy-wise and member-wise. Of course, it will come down to who is the speaker as well. So I think that plays a big part at the end of the day of, you know, us being able to get that issue past the finish line, whoever is speaker. But as you mentioned earlier, we had actual Republican members who lost their primaries who said to parents, hey, vote for the Democrat this time, even though I'm a longtime Republican, because, you know, these new candidates aren't for what they would say public schools. So it definitely is a contested issue, but it shows that maybe we made the right choice in the primaries and we have some good people on this issue. So time will tell, but we do have a lot more people who are energized around this issue because that was one of their main reasons for primarying some of those people out of office.
Yeah, I mean, I heard Cruz talk about a little, Trump mentioned it a couple times. So still with some relevance, but probably matters more when it comes to our Texas legislature. I wanted to just keep us on as long as we could, and maybe there'd be some like announcement so I could feel like I was a part of some historic moment. But I know we've been on now for, maybe close to an hour, and I don't want to keep you all too long. We'll see what happens on some of these issues. But just to recap, all the statewide races, Republicans won, excuse me. You had Christy Craddock and Railroad Commission. You had a bunch of Court of Criminal Appeals and Texas Supreme Court, John Devine, Jimmy Blacklock, and all these different folks. All those were won by the Republicans. And so not a surprise there, but, always, I'm sure, some confirmation to those folks. Would the Senate race impact them, right? If Colin Allred is neck and neck with Cruz, would that impact their race? Doesn't look like it really did. And so I'm sure they feel good about that. SBOE seats, I didn't see any real surprises on those either. Aaron Kinsey, a new guy coming in, and others that were probably expected. And so, again, the Senate race, the big news, maybe a House seat or two. We'll see when it comes down to the wire on some of those, if any of those change. A near miss in the Senate, if you will, for that South Texas seat. And so, but other than that, I don't think a lot's changed for the state legislature. Look, a lot of members got involved with Cruz. It'd be interesting to see if, how his support of school choice, and now that he's reelected, I'm not saying he's going to play a factor in who the Speaker of the House is in Texas, but I wouldn't be surprised if, you see him around a little bit and, returning the favor, if you will, for so many people that really worked hard to support him, that were also in the middle of their own state House race, which would make a lot of sense. I mean, the lieutenant governor was very close with him and put a lot of time and effort to supporting Cruz while supporting Trump as well. So we'll see how some of these things play out. But, look, if Trump's president, I think the school choice issue is in a much better position, may give people more confidence at the state level to try to get something like that done. Because remember, that's about, in a lot of issues, right? The Department of Justice, the so-called Department of Education, all those things turn Republican. It helps on these issues in so many ways at the state level. Would you agree with that, Christian?
Absolutely. I think if you have messaging from the national level, especially from the Oval Office, but in Congress, it gives a lot of the legislature cover to go after these issues too. And Trump really is what drives culture. I think his deciding to talk about the southern border in 2016 was what got all of the other presidential candidates to start talking about the southern border. I'll remind you that this really wasn't much of an issue, and in 2012 and 13 and 14, there were members in the Texas and in the U.S. Senate that were trying to pass amnesty. So, President Trump has really driven home this issue. And if he talks about, keeping men out of women's sports, rest assured, that's going to bring the issue front and center. And if he's going to talk about school choice, if he becomes an advocate and proponent of school choice, just like those other two issues, it will definitely give the legislatures more cover to do this because it'll become immediately more popular in the states. And there are people, Governor Abbott really wasn't always a proponent. Maybe he was, but he just didn't advocate for it. I worked on his first race and I love Governor Abbott. I'm just saying, there's a lot of these leaders who are naturally driven by polling, and they're going to do what the polling suggests, right or left, or whatever they're going to do, whatever decision they're going to make. It's going to be driven by the polling. And President Trump, when he says something, immediately it becomes more popular in the states. And again, that gives cover for these members of the state house, even if they're in rural areas, to advocate for school choice because it's now more popular than it's ever been. And Governor Abbott, by the way, I just want to commend him. He's done such a great job of, ousting the members who do not support school choice and in putting and installing in the members who do. And this will bode well for his future. I think Governor Abbott is going to, whatever he wants to do next, he's going to be in good position to do it.
Okay, I might put her on the spot. Tell me if you can't tell anything, you can't say anything about this, Mary Elizabeth, about a comment someone made about who might be on the short list if President Trump gets elected to move to the White House. Say it if you can. If you can't, that's okay. But I mean, but the reason I bring that up is Abbott's done a fantastic job of using his platform, his bully pulpit, his role, his war chest, to really have an influence on the issues that he cares about through certain candidates, right? School choice being one of them, border security, and pushing back against the federal government, particularly the Biden administration, right? I mean, and I'm not trying to compare, but you look at people that have been very active. Ken Paxton's played certainly a big role in a lot of these things, but Abbott, a lot of people are surprised that he's not on the ballot. I have people asking me, they're like, isn't he running for re-election? I'm like, no, he's not, because he's been out there so much supporting candidates, raising money, giving it out, appearing at events, all kinds of different things. And so, he rolled up his sleeves and just, it's been so noticeable and appreciated, right? I mean, it's not something that he's required to do. So what's next for him is this next legislature, but could there be more? I mean, could he be Attorney General of the United States? I don't know. I mean, would he, it'd be hard to resist an opportunity to be at such a level or be on the U.S. Supreme Court, what his interests are. I think it's one of the best jobs you could have is to be governor of the state of Texas. But that's me, I think a lot of people feel that way. But I bet he's going to be like, I got some unfinished business here in Texas, this legislative session, but we'll see. I mean, I don't know, Mary Elizabeth, did I put you on the spot?
I mean, as last I heard, he's running again in 2026,
Yep.
but I think it's highly likely that you could see Governor Abbott running for president in 2028. I mean, regardless of, JD Vance being the vice president, I think Governor Abbott would run, and become more prominent immediately by having run. And, even if he doesn't win, he could be, really high level in the administration and JD Vance's administration if he were to, JD Vance were to win. Another thing that Greg Abbott could do is he could, decide now that he wants to work in the administration. But I mean, obviously, he's been there 12 years as of 2026.
This is true.
And so, he would be running for re-election for what would be the longest tenure ever. I think Governor Perry has the record right now as, maybe 13 years. But that would be big. There's going to be a shakeup in 2026. It's possible with, all these new U.S. senators that are Republican that, Paxton could be appointed to be the Attorney General of the United States because he is very much in line with President Trump more than anybody else that could possibly take that Attorney General position. But Paxton's also talked about running against John Cornyn, so we'll see. It's going to be very interesting to watch, and Dan Patrick has really advocated for Governor Abbott to have a really good position. And, Governor Patrick, I'm sure, wants to become not lieutenant governor anymore, but governor. So there could be some changes there. And then there's a big shakeup for, that attorney general seat and that governor, that governor seat eventually, and as well as the lieutenant governor seat. So there could be a lot of huge openings, just like there was in 2014, Jonathan, in the 2026 cycle. We'll see. But it's really possible. President Trump loves Governor Patrick. He loves Attorney General Paxton. He loves Governor Abbott. They could all be in the administration if he wanted, but that would be really bad to take them all away at the same time.
Yeah. And we do have some great leaders that probably could come up, but man, it'd be a lot of fun too, though, to have a lot of Texas people up there, but at the same time, it would leave quite the void, but look, you imagine all those people together, what we could end up doing could be quite extraordinary. It could be one of the most important administrations that our country has ever had. Okay, real quick, because some of the data I was looking at was not updated. The folks court are saying that the Senate District seat 27 with Lamatia and Adam Hinojosa is almost tied, and actually that Lamatia, the Democrat, is trailing. And also they're reporting that the Nueces County seat that I was trying to remember who that was, District 34, that the Republican Denise Villalobos is, they're saying she's won, that she defeated Solomon Ortiz. So that is a Republican pickup. I don't know much about her, so that'll be interesting to see. And if Adam Hinojosa picks up this seat in the Senate, I mean, those are only two particular offices, but boy, could be pretty notable for this coming legislature.
Absolutely.
So, Mary Elizabeth, I'll let you chime in on that real quick, and then we'll probably cut this thing off. Even though I'm seeing Georgia back there, 51-48 Trump, man, when are they going to call it? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, you think if, and I don't know Denise Villalobos and what's her position on school choice. Wouldn't surprise me if Abbott was involved in that race, but picking up one House seat where there's already momentum, it certainly could be valuable. I mean, you're going to need every vote you can get for school choice, even though on paper it might look like the votes are there. You and I know everybody's not always there. It's easier to kill a bill than it is to pass one. Doesn't hurt to have an extra vote.
That's very true. And I'm not sure what Denise, says about this issue or what her stance is, but you're right. The more votes, the merrier. It's always helpful. Like even when we're at State Board of Education, as we've seen recently, sometimes you have to have more people who you would think would vote on that issue and not count your chickens before you hatch. So if that's another seat we can gain, then that'll be very helpful for the school choice issue. And then again, with the Lamatia seat, I mean, if we were able to flip that seat in the Senate, that would be huge. Even though we have a supermajority in the Senate, it's just good that we have more voices in support of the school choice issue and other educational and parental rights issues. So I think that'll be very interesting to see. I mean, I was listening to more of a kind of left radio show on my way to this party, and they were talking about the Texas House becoming more red. And so maybe that's what they were projecting and starting to see. So it'll be interesting if we gain that extra kind of like surprise seat at the end of tonight.
Yeah, well, and I'm looking at an article here, and I'm going to do this on the screen share just so y'all can see it because it's fairly timely. And then I'll probably get us out of here. This is an article from the Corpus Christi Times from over the weekend. And this is Denise Villalobos and Adam Hinojosa with Governor Abbott right in the middle of appears a campaign stop that they were doing there together. So certainly the governor's fingerprints on those two races, not a surprise there. And let me just look real quick, and we'll see how those turn out. And I think sometimes Democrats do a little bit better on election day. But I was going to try to check Newsmax real quick to see if they're updating any results of calling anything. And no, Michigan, they're projecting Harris winning Oregon. Trump, Ohio, no surprise there. We already talked about them projecting him winning Georgia, but I don't think that reflects the number from Fox that's behind the screen there with you, Mary Elizabeth. So, okay, we're going to finish up predictions. Christian Collins, does Trump pull this out tonight, tomorrow, at all? What do you think is going to happen?
Oh, man. I think late into the night, early in the morning, we find out that President Trump has won. Yeah, which was the way it sort of happened in 2016. Maybe it was like 2 or 3 in the morning. I was up late. I don't remember. The first time around. Mary Elizabeth, what do you think is going to happen?
I predict we'll find out maybe tonight or in the morning. We're in a different circumstance in 2020. We don't have the mail-in ballots. Also, I think, Georgia just doesn't have the same kind of atmosphere that they used to have with some of the problems with, elections and the ballots. So I think we're in a better position there. I remember 2016, I was in law school and I had to take a break and just not pay attention to things. And the next thing I looked up, closed my computer, and, Trump won. And so I think we will probably see a repeat of 2016. I think he's in a strong position to know tonight, and I hope we have a victory tonight.
Well, so I I was in law school when Bush v. Gore was happening. Really take y'all back. Okay. The year 2000. Somebody was asking me about that earlier, and I was like, yeah, that happened. My son was asking me, oh, what if this happened? What if, I said, sometimes the courts get involved. You know, that's what happened in 2000 when Bush was first president. And I was like, that was my first year in law school. And it was like that. Everybody was kind of glued to the TV and whatever, you know, trying to figure all that stuff out. And so, all right. So listen, hey, Christian, really appreciate you. We spent a lot of time together this year and before as well, but appreciate your insight. Fantastic commentary, tremendous, great insight to help round things out for us this evening. We'll all probably stay up a little late tonight and figure out. I'm going to be in Dallas, by the way. I've got to go see one of our supporters, so I'll have some good things to talk with him about. But I'll be heading on the road and then maybe coming back tomorrow night and getting some rest. Do not call me on Thursday or Friday unless you have a donation, people out there. But because I might try to rest, like I was saying, since the second week of July until now. I mean, it's been nonstop, but you know, this is what we do for such a time as this. So Christian Collins, thank you. Director of Government Relations for Texas Values, Mary Elizabeth, thank you. And we'll see what happens later tonight or early in the morning. So, and thank you, Texas Values supporters, for watching this Facebook Live. Check for our social media. We'll try to stay up and update if there's a decision about the next president of the United States. So God bless y'all. God bless Texas.
Thank you.